back to the channel. In part 2, I'm going to refactor the UI that we created in the first part and kind of break a bunch of things out into separate components. Check it out. I'm going to do a quick refactoring of this code. So if you take a look at what we have here in the template, you can see that there's some clearly defined components for us to create. So for one, we can replace this. So let's start there. This guy can be converted to an IonLoading. IonLoading, and then the next thing we need to say is open, and then set is open. So basically, if this is the condition, then this is the condition. So let's take this code here and set is open, and then message, and the message that we want to set here is message equals loading. Makes sense. And then let's close this guy out and end it. So that's one nice little touch. Let's make sure we go down here and add the component, IonLoading, and then go down here and add the component, IonLoading. Now let's see, let's log out. Let's just start the app. You see the little loading that's happening when the app is first starting up. So that's what we wanted. If other things were going on, you'd see more. So that's a little bit of cleanup there. Now the next thing let's do here is this whole thing is also another component. It's a component that displays the username and the user ID, and we need it to emit an event when someone clicks on the button. So let's go back to our code. Let's go into views here and let's create a new folder, components, and then inside of here we'll call that UserInfoPanel. So let's say UserInfoPanel.vue, Firebase 3 single file component we want to create. We're going to use CSS if any. We want it to be scoped. Let's give this guy a name. And what did we call this? UserInfoPanel. And so now we have the name set. And so for the UserInfoPanel, let me go back to my home views. Where is this? Yeah, this is where I want to replace my UserInfoPanel. So let's take all this. This is saying if the user is not null, then I have a user, so render the information. Let's take this out, and that's the core of my template for my UserInfoPanel. All right. So, I took stuff I didn't. Here we go. Our UserInfoPanel. So now we have our UserInfoPanel. So our UserInfoPanel clearly needs a property as a user. Remember, we're doing things the new way with the setup. So let's go down here and make sure that we set up everything properly. So first thing, we're going to need our props, and then we're going to need a context. We'll use the context later for when we emit the events, but let's just put them in there as placeholders. And the first thing, as I said, is we are going to need to get the property in for the user, because we need to display the user up here at the top. And the first thing we want to do is, because this is going to try and render when it first starts out, is if there's no user, we use the kind of Elvis indicator to basically not try to render it if there's no user. And then the next thing that we want to do is let's kind of define what our props are. So let's come in here and set props. And we're going to set our prop up, and we have, let's get our comma here, we have our props, it's a user, and let's kind of be a little bit more specific. Type, for now, we won't go crazy, we'll just say it's type object, and we're going to say it's required. Required, I believe it's required UI is true. And so now we will have our prop coming in for a user. And then the next thing below is what we want to do is, that should be enough to at least, well, these guys are going to complain. So let's just do this console console log props, so they will stop complaining. And then let's move over. So we need a bunch of imports. Let's cheat and go back to, let's close these guys. We don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. This is the guy I'm in. I don't need that. Don't need that. So here's where we are. So we have our user info panel. Let's go back to our home view, and right here, user info panel. And we know this guy needs a user prop. User, and we're going to set that to be user. And let's close it out. User info panel. Let's define as an import my user info panel. Oh, I guess it automatically added. That's pretty dope. So that's my user info panel. And so my user info panel takes it all. Let's see if we can clean up some of these errors, see if we can need data yet. Home TS is missing a semi. Where is it? It's automatically added user info panel. User info panel. See, so it's already starting to complain about some imports here that it doesn't need. This item in the text. And so if we don't need them there, then we don't need them here. So let's just copy them because we'll put them over inside of our user info panel because we know we're going to need them here. So let's do import. We can start with those basics from Ionic Vue to get those guys in, and then they're complaining because they're not being used in components. Let's keep our components at the top so we don't have to keep looking for them. So we just say components, and let's just paste the same guys in. And we'll get a bunch of other complaints. So we know ion item, ion text, we need ion label in here. And then we need ion label here. All right, what's somebody's complaining? What is it? Unexpected tokens. Where's my red arrows to kind of show me things that are missing? Props. Component props setup. Context return. Let's see exactly what this error message says. Unexpected token, expected semicolon. Oh, unexpected script. Well, let's just try to keep this. Lang subset because I didn't put my TypeScript in. Okay, that's better. Okay, so now we have our login screen. Let's log in, and we have it's displaying our user. But the problem now is that no, that's right. That's all this guy needs to do. He just renders data. So I actually don't believe I need this. Because I'm just rendering data. I don't need any of this. Just getting the data. Yeah. So the user info panel is done. That was easy. And so now we've kind of cleaned up my view here. So now I just have, let's push this to the side. Now we just have if auth checked, then we render this. Else if I have a user, so basically I think I can just simplify it because the language is kind of weird. So let's see if I just do this. If I have a user, then render it. Yeah, so that's easier. And then otherwise, this is where we need to add the whole login screen. So we're going to create another component. Let's go back over here, components, and let's create another one. Login panel. And we're going to use this to kind of do the same thing. Vuebase. We're going to say TypeScript right after jump. So we get our TypeScript component, style is scope, language set, kind of format this guy a bit. And since this is our login panel, let's give me some space. We can go back here and we're going to take this whole thing, right? Actually, you want to know what I just realized? I need to go back here. We want, I jumped the gun. We want this logout inside of the user info panel also, just to kind of keep everything nice and tight. So inside the user info panel, at the end of this, we want the ability to log out. And since this guy needs to emit an event out, right? To try to, let's see if I can just keep this simple and just do this. Emit. I think it's EMT. EMM. I can't believe I'm spelling this wrong. $EMIT. $EMIT. Emit. And then all we want to do, this is just a logout. Do logout. What's it complaining about? Oh, I can't use that quote again. So I'm using a quote. So let's do this. So we need to do this. Single quote. Single quote. Okay, so now my logout button's inside of here. So now this guy, because I'm going to try to do this without putting anything in setup. So now this guy emits this do logout event. So that means that in my home panel, they've got to listen for the do logout event. So let's do this. Do, when it gets to do logout event, we're just going to call, don't we already have, what's it complaining? Oh, it's saying it needs function. So we already have an event that's handling the logout. So we're just going to use that. So where is it? Do logout. So we'll just take this function and we're going to say whenever my user panel emits the do logout event, call do logout. And let's see if that works properly. And that works properly. So we have our nice little panel cleaned up, and now let's get back to my login panel. So if we go in and we say, all right, we need everything inside of here for my login panel. So we're going to take everything from Ionic card. Thank you, ma'am. And we're going to go to my login panel, and we are going to add it inside of here. And so we've got all that. And we're going to, let's just start at the top here and do the same thing we did before. We're going to, when this guy clicks the button, we are going to $EMIT. Do logout. What is it? Do login. The difference this time is we have to pass a payload, and the payload we're going to pass are the credentials from the username and password. So we just put the credentials right there, and that will pass the credentials as the payload. But we need to actually define the credentials. And so we are going to define the credentials as a ref. And the way that we want to do that is like this. So we have our credentials. We want to return them so the UI has access to them. Create DNTLS. We need a ref, and the ref should come from Vue. So let's add this on the end here. So now we actually have our credentials. Our credentials are returned to the template, so that's how we're getting this binding when you type the stuff in. And then when you click the login button, we'll emit a login event. What am I missing? I'm missing all of my lovely Ionic imports. So let's go here, import. I think I'm going to copy a bunch of these from the, let's get this right, from Ionic. I need this in quote, from Ionic Vue. And let's go back to our home page because it's got a bunch of stuff in here it doesn't need. So it doesn't need any of this card content, card label, card input, card button. I don't believe it needs any of that. So let's go over to login, put them here. And then inside of here, components, put some of these guys down here, get my comma there, tighten this up a bit, and let me make sure I give this guy a name. Name, login panel. And what's it complaining about? Iron button is not defined. Iron button's right there. I'm back. It's my home page is complaining. Why do I need a button on my home page? There's no button. Just to log out. Let me add my panel. So, what did I call it? Login panel. We know that it's going to get a do login event, and then we know when we get that event, we will just want to call do login because that will pass the parameters down. So let's close that out. So we have our login panel that it auto import. Interesting. Let's import it, copy, login panel, and then login panel.vue, and then add down here login panel as a component. So what's going on here? It's complaining it doesn't need any of these guys, so let's move them. And if it doesn't need them there, so okay, we're back to our logout. Let's see our login. So let's log out and see. Right, so we have our login panel is rendering at least, and let's see if it works if I click my email address is badly formatted. So let me try this. Email it. So it looks like it's not getting my login panel. Call do login. Let's see what do login's expecting. Oh, do login's expecting to use a local credentials, but we're not using the local credentials, so we need to pass them in. So because that's what's coming in. That's what is coming in over the payload. And so the payload is a. How do you want to do this? Let's just do payload. Is any. We'll just say it's at any type when it comes in. And then we need email and password. So we will do this. We'll say const email password from payload. And then we'll just pass email and password in. Okay. And then so then we don't need this anymore. So we can remove this. That means I don't need this anymore, so we can remove this ref. And let's try, and all right, credentials are not defined. So we don't need to pass any credentials up because I'm not using them. They're getting passed out. Okay, so log in, log out. So our refactoring worked. So what we did was we basically cleaned up our UI. We separated things out into smaller components that focus on specifically what their functionality is. We showed how to emit events to handle specific tasks that we want to handle. So now you can see my user info panel and my login panel. They support these events. The other guy we need to add on here ideally is the create account, because when you click underneath login, you probably want to be able to emit create account clicked or forgot password clicked. So we can add all those features in later. But the idea here is just to quickly kind of show you how to refactor and create components in your Vue applications. I'm going to wrap this up here. And the next one we are going to, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and create as much functionality as we can in one page, get the app doing what it's supposed to do, and then, refactor. So just like we did, we got the login and the get user to work, and then we refactored to a different UI. And then we're going to do the same thing in the next piece. So this is where I'm going to stop for now. You guys take care. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and we will chat later. Peace.